This is James Mathers at Cine Gear Expo 2019. I'm here with my friend Snehal Patel. He is the cinema sales manager for the United States, for all of the Americas, I guess. And tell us a little bit about Zeiss and how you got to be into cinema sales. I know it started with microscopes many years ago.
Yeah, many years ago. 1846 is when we started with microscopes. So it's been a good while. And in the beginning, the reason why microscopes from Zeiss were important was Zeiss was one of the first companies in Germany and in Europe to start using mathematical equations to model what the next magnification of a microscope would look like. At that time, there was a lot of trial and error. You know, you put a certain convex lens and certain concave glass next to each other with a certain distance, and you get a magnification. And of course, the more elements you have, the more complicated it gets. But imagine for hundreds of years, it's a lot of trial and error to try to figure out, like, okay, how do you get it more magnified? And here comes Zeiss with the concept, like, well, let's use math. So if we're going to create a new focal length or basically a new magnification, let's try to figure out what it's really going to do. And that actually aids in many different ways, because when you use math to model the product, you also get more consistency. You can manufacture much more easily because you have specs. You can mass produce, and that's all the things that Zeiss did and got good at. And they built up a nice, production. And then from microscopes, they went to all kinds of other optics.
Eyeglasses.
Yeah, my
photography
lenses. Yeah, photography lenses, cinematography, of course. Our first photo division was in the 1890s, is when that was started. And then the first time that our lenses were used for motion picture were anywhere between the 1910s and 20s. Wow. Because a lot of times at that time, they were just using photo lenses on the cameras, right? And then we made specialty built lenses for cinema starting in the 1920s. You can see, like, at our office in Sherman Oaks in LA, we have a Pathé camera from France, which has a German lens in it. It has a Zeiss lens in it, and that's from somewhere in the 1920s or 30s. So for like over 100 years, Zeiss has been involved in cinema. And then of the 100 years, 82 years was spent with ARRI. Since 1935, we've been making lenses for ARRI cameras. For
Master Primes are the cream of the crop, huh?
Absolutely. They still sell. Master Primes still sell, Ultra Primes. And then, of course, there's the Master Anamorphics. Now, all of these, of course, were for the Super 35 sensor size or the Super 35 format. So a little bit cropped compared to full frame, right? But now we have Supreme Primes, which we introduced last year at Cine Gear, actually, a year ago, and which are a successful line of lenses that we have that are a new version of high-end cinema lenses. They have very good image quality, excellent image quality, a nice look to them, and they cover a larger sensor.
Yeah, you've been doing that for a long time, though, and your stills cameras, right? Your stills lenses.
Yeah, still lenses, of course, are covering full frame or larger formats for many years.
And
medium format.
The first cinema glass that you came out with was pretty wide coverage.
You mean the CP2s?
CP2s have been out for a long time, right?
Right. Yeah. So the first direct Zeiss lens that we sold as a company instead of through an OEM partner was a CP2s.
So
and those were large format.
Large sensors are no big deal, no new thing for Zeiss.
No, because if you could, when you were doing it for photo lenses, and then we had the CP2s, and then the CZ2 zooms, the cinema zooms, those are also full frame coverage. So we've been doing that since 2009, actually. So it's 2019 now. So for 10 years. We've had large format lenses ready to go for the market.
Now, I know your company's been at the forefront of using lens metadata. Can you tell us about that and how you're using it?
Yeah, so when we were in making lenses like the Master Primes sported the LDS system with ARRI, which allowed you to capture lens data, which included focus position, iris position, the serial number of the lens, the ring type, the focal length of the lens, the entrance pupil position, which allows you to calculate your angle of view, these kinds of pieces of info. Now with the Supreme Primes and with the CP3 XDs, you actually get even more info. You get lens characteristics. Now this aids in visual effects and virtual production and processes like this, because you get the shading information, meaning what is the exposure change from the center of the lens to the edge, and what is the curvature of the lens, what is the distortion that's caused by the lens. These are pieces of information that visual effects artists and supervisors use to recreate a shot that looks realistic. For example, if I just added a 3D object in the foreground that was flat looking and didn't shade and distort like every other object that's in the frame, it would be odd, and it would really throw you off, and you would make it seem like you're watching something that's fake, you know?
And as you're focusing and zooming, this is changing, but this updates frame by frame.
Correct, absolutely. So as you change your focus and iris, your shading distortion characteristics change a little bit. And we do track that exact change, and the lens tells you frame by frame, like you said, exactly what's going on. So now we have a whole pipeline where this information is not lost, because now in the Red cameras, DSMC2 bodies, it records directly inside the camera. Now also with the Sony cameras, with the Venice, they're going to announce at Cine Gear a new firmware. That firmware will also allow you to record this lens data directly through the pins of the lens into the camera system. It's a passive system. You don't have to worry about losing that information. You could always extract it for later use. And on the back end, we have tools with SilverStack and LiveGrade from Pomford to monitor this information on set and to capture it and make outputs. And then on the back end, we have plugins for After Effects and Nuke, which allow you to apply these characteristics.
What do you see for the future of lenses?
I think for the future of lenses is that we're going to see definitely a lot more stuff in the larger formats. I think we'll see more anamorphic in larger formats as well. And I think we're going to start to keep seeing more and more unique characteristics and looks out there. As you well know, there's a lot of new manufacturers making lenses that are, let's say, quote unquote, interesting. Not like maybe not super scientifically perfect.
But they have character.
But they have character. Now it just depends on what kind of character you want. Do you want really obvious flaws that are kind of noticeable, or do you want stuff that's more subtle? You have a lot of different flavors, and I think more and more of that's going to keep happening.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate the time.